All right, a happy Monday. Hopefully everyone's great. We got draft week, and then we've got free agency next Sunday. A lot going on here. I am in, as you can see behind me, Brooklyn, New York. Just got back from LA on Saturday night and got up to Brooklyn on Sunday. And I feel like we've done like 3 videos of these, but I feel like we always need to kind of give people a refresher. Especially how the apron rules have changed. We did a video, and I think we did a video last year when the CBA rules came out, and then we did another video in April, and we're going to do another video on the apron rules. And we're going to try to just, I don't want to say dumb it down, but make it really easy for people to understand, because I do think people, especially when I put out the slide and it has all the restrictions, people's heads are like spinning like crazy here. So we have a article up, Tim Bontemps and I, on ESPN.com. The article is free. It is not an E+ article. At least I don't think it's an E+ article, where we basically go through the apron and the 12 plus teams that it impacts, basically half the league. We talk about each team. We basically lead with the quote from Josh Kroenke, the vice chairman of the Denver Nuggets, where basically he said the roster they built in Denver, the championship team in 2023, was built under a different set of rules. He is correct. And now the high-spending 3-max team of Denver is going to feel the squeeze of these rules, and it basically will force you to make decisions. As one team executive said to me, it's not like the league is telling you you can't keep your roster together. They're not saying that. It's not technically a hard cap, but what they are saying is that for you to add, whether it be in a trade or in free agency or in the buyout market, it becomes extremely, extremely difficult, and there are consequences whether a transaction will hard cap you. So there are basically, instead of the old days used to be, you made a trade and you'd go to your owner and you say it's going to cost me $20 million. Nowadays, you make a trade and it's okay. It's going to cost me the luxury tax. It's going to cost me, or am I going to get hard capped at the first apron? Am I hard capped at the second apron? All these different 4-step rules. And we're going to go into the rules in a minute. And I'll give you an example real quick. Oklahoma City and Chicago made a trade last week. Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. Caruso's contract had $3 million guaranteed. Giddey's was around $7 million. Because technically Chicago was taking back more money, they would have hard capped themselves at the first apron. I have my notes right here because it's 178.7. Okay, so in that scenario, they guarantee the contract. Now instead of $3 million going out, it's $9 million going out, and they're taking back less money. They are not hard capped at the first apron. Those are Oklahoma City's hard capped, but you don't have to worry about them because at the first apron, because they have so much flexibility as far as with where they are cap space wise. So that's the thinking here. And listen, Bontemps and I do not want to be the apron police. We don't want to. You guys can go out and I think the fun of it all is putting together fantasy trades and hypothetical trades and Paul George trades and to New York to Golden State. I'm not going to stand on a ledge and say that can't happen. Go ahead and do it and stuff like that. When we get to the point where maybe if something gets close, then we'll come in and say hey, this is what is going to happen. Okay, so here's where we need to look at it from the apron standpoint. There are 2 things, right? You've got, we call it the bandwidths of the salary cap. You've got the salary cap, which is going to be at projected $141 million. Okay, salary cap is a soft cap. You can exceed it to re-sign your own players. You can exceed the the luxury tax to re-sign your own players. We have 5 teams that are basically under the salary cap. They can go out and spend on free agency. Philly can go out and spend on Paul George or whoever they want to do, Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Then we have the luxury tax. Okay, once you exceed the luxury tax, which is projected at 171. You pay a penalty. It's basically a sliding scale. If you're over the penalty, if you're over the luxury tax, $3 million, it's $1.50 for every dollar, right? We're not going to do a luxury tax demonstration. Then we have the first apron. Okay, the first apron is roughly $7 million over the luxury tax. So next year, or this in about a week, when 2024-25 calendar starts, we are projecting the first apron at $178.7 million. Now, you could still exceed it. Okay, you could still go over it. However, you can't go over it if you trigger these type of transactions. Okay, if you acquire a player in a sign and trade, that rule has not changed. Okay, so let's say you are at $174 million. You want to acquire a player making $10 million in a sign and trade. That is not allowed. Okay, you are not allowed to use a pre-existing trade exception. Atlanta's got a $25 million trade exception. They go out and they're right at the apron because you have to also look at salaries for next season. Okay, Minnesota, although they're under the apron now, the league is looking at your salary starting on July 1. So if you have a $4 million trade exception and you're already over the first apron for next year, that is not allowed. So pre-existing trade exceptions, if it puts you over the first apron. You're not allowed to take back more money in a trade. You trade a $25 million player for a $27 million player. The trade works. You can do it, but it will trigger the first apron. Okay? So if you're at $165 million, you're below it, you're about $13 million, you could still go out and make a trade and take back more money. However, now it triggers the first apron. Give you an example. Sacramento is at $174 million roughly and with bonuses. When you look at I'm getting text here right now, I'm like distracted. When you look at the Malik Monk agreement, if they go out and trade for a player making $26 million, they send out $25 million. Now they are hard capped at that $178.7 million first apron. Okay. This is during the regular season. We knew this rule before, not allowed to acquire a player or sign a player who was waived, had a salary of $12.9 million or more, pre-existing salary. That's just for the regular season. This doesn't apply to the offseason. So if someone gets waived at making $20 million, go ahead and sign them, okay? You are allowed to, if you create a new trade exception, if you trade out a $20 million player for a $15 million player and you create a $5 million trade exception, you are allowed to use that. You are allowed to use the $5.2 million tax mid-level. Denver did that last year. As long as you stay under the second apron, you're allowed to do that. Okay, that's the first apron. So that's the less of the restrictions here as far as where teams are. Okay, the second apron, which is now roughly $189.5 million. So it's $10 million roughly above the first apron. Roughly $17 million above the luxury tax. The apron levels grow as the salary cap grows. Okay, so if the salary cap goes from 141 to 155 next year in 25-26, the aprons will get a nice little boost as far as where the growth will be. And that is the most important part of it, that it will grow as this salary cap grows. But here's your restrictions for the second apron teams. Okay, so these are your Bostons, your Phoenixes, maybe Clips of the world, your high Milwaukee's. And remember, unlikely bonuses count towards the apron no matter what. So if Chris Middleton did not earn bonuses, they continue to count. Tyler Hero did not earn bonuses, they continue to count against the apron, okay? No matter what. Not allowed to acquire a player in a sign and trade, same. Not allowed to use a pre-existing trade exception, it's the same. Not allowed to take back more money in a trade. It's the same as the first apron. Not allowed to aggregate contracts in a trade. What does aggregate mean? If Phoenix wanted to trade Yusuf Nurkic and Nasir Little and take back a player earning $23 million, that is not allowed. Not allowed to sign a player waived during the regular season. We've talked about that, who was bought out. Here's one. Not allowed to sign and trade your own free agent if the incoming salary exceeds the second apron. If Phoenix wanted to trade Royce O'Neal and take back a $15 million player, that is not allowed. Not allowed to use a trade exception created from a sign and trade. So if you signed and traded a player making $10 million, you didn't take anything back, it creates a $10 million trade exception. You're not allowed to use that. You're allowed to use a trade exception created. That's the same if a new trade exception is created. Your 2032 first is frozen if you finish the 2024-25 season over the apron. That doesn't get calculated until next June. Remember, we work in a 7-year window. So basically, we go from 2025 to 2031. Once the calendar flips next year at the draft, then we're looking at 2032. Okay, so those are your apron in a nutshell restrictions. We've got slides out. We can show it. Here are your teams that are impacted, okay? When you're looking at teams like Atlanta, Memphis, Portland, do I think those 3 teams will be in the luxury tax in the first apron? No. Those teams are quasi-rebuilding teams right now. But for right now, we are treating them as apron teams. You are looking at Phoenix in the second apron. You are looking at Milwaukee in the second apron. You are looking at Boston in the second apron. We are looking at potentially the Lakers in the second apron, possibly. I think a lot of it depends, and I've been saying it all along, what happens with D'Angelo Russell. That dictates what flexibility they have. And here's the thing. Everybody's throwing around DeJounte Murray for the Lakers. If the Lakers go out and get DeJounte Murray, you basically eliminate the ability to go re-sign Max Christie and build out your roster because now you get hard capped because the likelihood is that you are taking more salary back when you are looking at the DeJounte Murray trade bonus that is factored in there. So if you trade Rui Hachimura for DeJounte Murray and you give him a first, I'm just throwing out hypothetical, you are not allowed to do that because it will hard cap you, okay? So that's the Lakers. The Clippers are a wild card, right? We're waiting to see what happens with Paul George, James Harden. They could go from potentially a cap space team to a below luxury tax team to a second apron. Paul George and James Harden come back, they're in the second apron. Okay, we talked about the Lakers. The Heat are waiting on decisions right now. They're right in the first apron. Caleb Martin comes, if they want to sign Caleb Martin or Haywood Highsmith, they go in the second apron. We talked about Memphis, Miami. The Knicks. I know everybody's throwing around Paul George scenarios. The New York is in the second apron if OG and Hartenstein come back and you keep Bogdanovic and Mitchell Robinson. That's why you're hearing all these Mitchell Robinson rumors, because it forces you to choose who you want to keep. You can run back your roster in New York. You can do that, but you all will be in the second apron. So when that next disgruntled all-star becomes available, you will not be able to put contracts together to send out. Portland, we talked about the Celtics. Celtics could be paying $450 million in 2025-26, right? And we wrote about it. The punitive restrictions kick in 25-26. Denver is a wild card. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Milwaukee, Minnesota, Clips, Phoenix. And who does it benefit? Okay? Who does it benefit? It benefits teams that are under the salary cap. It benefits the in-between teams like Brooklyn and Washington. Houston, it benefits the teams that are nowhere near that can go out and absorb salary. Of course, Golden State is the team to watch this week. June 28th is the Chris Paul guarantee. If Chris Paul is waived and they elect not to bring back Klay Thompson, they are well below the luxury tax. They're right at the salary cap. They can go out and hypothetically make a Paul George for Wiggins, Kuminga, and Gary Payton type trade. That will be allowed. It triggers the second apron, but they have so much flexibility that they'll be able to maneuver. So 14 minutes on the apron. God, I hope this taped. We will talk soon. I'm on fire. It's in the air, it's